Hey guys, so today I'm here with a review of the Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 was a really big console back in the day, as it was Nintendo's first real major step up from the Super Nintendo. Now, of course, back in these days, everyone was still on their Super Nintendos or even your Sega Genesis, so to make the leap into full 3D gaming was definitely really pretty impressive, and Nintendo definitely did it right with the Nintendo 64. However, it was not by any means the first out to market. Of course, there were quite a few of its competitors that beat it, such as the 3DO, the PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, among several others. However, Nintendo, while it was a bit later, definitely came to and really packed a punch with the Nintendo 64. So let's go ahead and just take a look at what all it had to offer. So let's go ahead and take a tour around the console. So up front, we do have 4 controller ports. And the Nintendo 64 was actually somewhat unique in the fact that it was one of the first consoles to actually support 4-player gaming. Now, obviously, it wasn't the first, but really after the Nintendo 64 did it, everyone started doing it. And indeed, these days, pretty much all of the main consoles do support at least 4 players. Well, you can't really see it. There is a little light here that indicates when it's on. You have a nice sort of Nintendo 64 on the top. So flipping around to the side, you don't really see a whole lot. And around the back, there is even less. So actually, I don't have it right here, but there is. This is where the power supply goes, and it's a sort of an external power supply. Basically, this entire thing is filled up once you plug this power supply in. So not a big deal. Technically, it's an external, but since it's all inside the console, you really don't have to worry about tripping over it or anything like that. And over here, you do have the audio and video out. And there's not a whole lot on this side either. And if we go ahead and flip it up top here, of course it's going to be a little hard to see since this is, of course, translucent orange, one of the coolest colors ever. So you do have the on-off switch, you can go ahead and turn it on and off, obviously. You do have a reset button, and right under here you do have a spot for the expansion pack. Now the expansion pack from the Nintendo 64 basically gave it more RAM. Now it didn't come. It didn't come with all Nintendo 64s. But if you did go ahead and buy it, you would be able to play some games. Some games looked better, and some games actually required it. So it was definitely kind of interesting there. Go ahead and slide this on here. Up here we do have the cartridge slot, and that was something else where the Nintendo 64 kind of differed from its competitors, and the fact that it actually went ahead and used cartridges rather than the disc, like CDs, for example, of pretty much everything else. Now this was both a help and a hindrance to the Nintendo 64. On one hand, it did help with load times. Cartridges load really quite a bit faster than their CD-based counterparts. However, cartridges were very, very expensive compared to a CD, which costs next to nothing to produce. Now, overall, though, the Nintendo 64 was definitely a very good-looking console. It was very, very, compact compared to, a lot of the consoles of today. And one of my favorite parts of the Nintendo 64 is just the color. Now, it did come in quite a few different colors, including black and quite a few other sort of standard ones. However, it also did come in some more kind of crazy colors, which is like the one I have here, which is translucent orange. Now, just imagine if they sold an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3 or a Wii in translucent orange today. Do you ask how many people would buy it? Now let's go ahead and take a look at the Nintendo 64 controller. So guys, this was a unique controller. I've got to say that. It was a unique controller. So as you can see here, it's a very, very large controller. Indeed, it actually had this kind of like a spaceship looking design with, 3 handles instead of 2. And it worked pretty decently. So you do have a D-pad, all your standard directional buttons, A and B, start. And then you do have a kind of a unique sort of joystick or control stick or whatever you want to call it. Did work pretty well. However, the Nintendo 64 definitely was not one of my favorite controllers. While it did have quite a few buttons, it even has L and R, and if we go ahead and flip it over here, you even had a little button here for shooting, like if you're flying a plane, you can shoot back there. Alright, but there are quite a few different layouts for the Nintendo 64 controller. Well, I wasn't a big fan of it, as most of them, well, you really couldn't grab everything you couldn't use all buttons on the screen at once. So what I mean by that is, if you're holding it like this, you do these, but you really can't. I mean, it's kind of a stretch to reach your thumb all the way over there. I have about average size hands, especially if you had even smaller hands, you definitely wouldn't be able to reach it. And on the other hand, if you want to go ahead and, hold it like this, and do like the, hit that button on the back, move this. Then you kind of got into the thing where your hands were a little too close together and you're having to tilt the controller. So it was definitely a unique controller, and it even did have, go ahead and just flip this over here, it even did have some expansions. So as you can see here, there's a little slot right here where you can go ahead and plug in some different things. Now there are quite a few different ways that you could do this. For example, there's a rumble pack as well as a couple others. However, what I have here is an expansion pack. So let's go ahead, or rather a transfer pack. So the way this works, just snaps right on. You can go ahead and slide in several Game Boy games, and you actually go ahead and have the Game Boy games play on the Nintendo 64. You could transfer stuff. So it was definitely a kind of a unique feature. However, overall, not the biggest fan of the Nintendo 64 controller. It was just a little bit too far out there, and they just tried a few too many things for my liking, and not all of it really paid off. Okay, so that's it for my review of the Nintendo 64. Personally, I really never was too into the Nintendo 64 when it was brand new. I pretty much spent all my time and all my money buying games for the original PlayStation 1. However, that should say nothing against the Nintendo 64. It was and remains to be a really fantastic console. Indeed, if you take a look, two of the best games of all time, in my opinion, GoldenEye 007 and Ocarina of Time, both were Nintendo 64 exclusives. So that should definitely give you kind of an idea of, what power and what a great console the Nintendo 64 was. So anyway, guys, if you're interested in buying a Nintendo 64, I definitely recommend it. They are very, very plentiful these days. Indeed, just the same way that the original PlayStation and quite a few other older consoles are, these cost next to nothing these days, and they're really fantastic consoles. Now, if you're not really in the market to go ahead and buy yourself a Nintendo 64, or for whatever reason you're not interested, you should know that you can actually play Nintendo 64 games on the Wii. Now, obviously, good luck trying to slot a Nintendo 64 cartridge into it, but you can actually go ahead and download it in the Virtual Console section. So, a lot of the fantastic, some of the best games of all time for the Nintendo 64 are available, so you can go ahead and play them on the Wii today. So either way you do it, I definitely recommend. Nintendo 64 was a great console and had a lot of just fantastic, groundbreaking games. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. Thanks for watching.